On my birthday, my husband raised his glass to his new bride. My own son kissed her hand while I sat there invisible at my own party. Whispers filled the room, laughter stung my ears. I only smiled. Weeks later, that same bride was led out in handcuffs, her lies broadcast across the nation. I'm glad you're here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. When I turned 53, I expected nothing more than a quiet evening at home. Maybe dinner with my husband and son if they weren't too busy. What I walked into instead was a house dressed like a stranger's fantasy. Balloons floated lazily against the ceiling, pink and gold streamers draped from the chandelier I had chosen a quarter century ago, and the dining table gleamed with my wedding china. My stomach tightened before I even saw their faces. Something about the way conversations died mid-sentence when I stepped through the door told me that none of this was for me. "Surprise!" Selena called out, her arms outstretched like she was the queen of some stage production. My daughter-in-law looked flawless in a cream-colored dress, her dark hair swept into effortless waves, her smile sparkling like a diamond meant to blind. She was always beautiful, but tonight there was something sharper beneath her beauty, something that scraped against my nerves. I forced my lips into a polite smile, setting my purse on the entry table. "You didn't have to do all this." "Of course I did," she cooed, gliding forward to kiss my cheek. Her perfume was thick and cloying, sickly sweet like fruit left too long in the sun. It's not every day my mother-in-law turns 53. The gathering was small, but every face seemed tense, eyes darting between one another. My sister Rachel sat stiff on the couch, her gaze fixed firmly on the floor. Mrs. Whitaker from next door clutched her wineglass as though she might drown without it. A few of Selena's friends lingered by the kitchen, whispering behind manicured hands. And then there was Daniel, my husband of 25 years, standing at the fireplace with his hands buried in his pockets. He didn't look at me. He couldn't. "Where's Matthew?" I asked, scanning the room for the only reason I had tolerated Selena this long. "Business trip," Selena said smoothly. "He sends his love, of course, but don't worry. We have everything handled here." Something cold gripped my chest. In 28 years, Matthew had never once missed my birthday. Not for snowstorms, not for business, not even during his honeymoon. The thought of him suddenly prioritizing work over family was impossible. "Come sit down, Evelyn," Daniel finally said, his voice low, deliberate. "We have something for you." I moved toward my armchair, the one I had claimed every evening for the last decade. But Selena blocked me with a hand at my elbow. "Actually, let's sit at the table. I made your favorite cake." She guided me to the head of the table, the seat reserved for special occasions, and there it sat. A chocolate cake with vanilla frosting, my family's tradition, except this one was too perfect, too polished, like it had come from a bakery window rather than my own hands. Daniel cleared his throat, standing behind Selena with his hands resting lightly on her shoulders. The gesture made my stomach twist. When had he started touching her like that? "There's no easy way to say this," he began, voice unsteady. Selena reached into her purse and placed a manila envelope before me with a grace that mocked the weight of it. "We thought it would be best to do this with everyone here," she said softly. "So there are witnesses." My fingers trembled as I lifted the flap. The words blurred, but phrases stabbed through the haze. Irreconcilable differences, dissolution of marriage, division of assets, divorce papers. I raised my eyes to Daniel, hoping for some glimmer of doubt, of regret, of love. But his face was carved from stone, and Selena's hand crept over his, sealing the truth. "We're getting married," Selena announced brightly, like unveiling a prize, "as soon as the divorce is final." The room fell silent except for the tick of the grandfather clock. They were waiting for me to crumble. Rachel's eyes glistened. Mrs. Whitaker's knuckles whitened around her glass. Everyone braced for the breakdown, the begging, the scene. But I didn't give it to them. I slid the papers back into the envelope and folded my hands neatly in my lap. I looked straight at Selena, at her polished smile, her predatory eyes, and spoke with a voice as calm and sharp as glass. "Well," I said, "I hope you'll be very happy together." Her smile faltered. This wasn't the reaction she had scripted. She leaned closer, almost demanding. "That's it? That's all you have to say?" I rose slowly, smoothing my skirt. "What else would you like me to say, dear?" The endearment struck deep. Her jaw tightened before she smothered it with another smile. She mentioned details, the house, the cars, my belongings, but I cut her off with a glance at Daniel. You've always been thorough with paperwork. I picked up my purse. Thank you for the party, and congratulations on your engagement. Rachel tried to rise, but Selena's voice sliced the air. Let her go. She's made her choice. It is. I paused at the door, taking in the house that was no longer mine. It felt like a stage, and I had just been written out. Enjoy the cakes, I said softly. I hope it tastes as sweet as you imagined. Then I stepped into the night, leaving behind the life I had built, my cheeks burning, my heart hollow. The cool air rushed against me as I fumbled for my keys, and for the first time in decades, I realized something terrifying and strangely liberating. I had nothing left to lose. The Hampton Inn smelled faintly of bleach and stale air freshener, a place where lives brushed past one another without ever touching. It wasn't where I had imagined ending my 53rd birthday, but the anonymous beige walls offered a strange sort of shelter. I sat on the edge of the stiff bed, still in my dress, the divorce papers spread across the comforter like they belonged to someone else. 25 years of marriage reduced to sterile phrases, irreconcilable differences, dissolution of marriage, division of assets. Daniel wanted me gone as quickly and cleanly as possible. He would keep the house, the investments, the antiques passed down from my grandmother. I was to receive a modest allowance and my car, scraps really, from the life I had built with him. I should have been devastated, but I felt oddly detached, like I was reading a stranger's obituary. My phone buzzed with Rachel's name. Are you okay? Where are you? Call me. I turned it face down. I wasn't ready to hear pity in her voice. Not yet. What I needed was silence, space to understand how I had missed the signs, because there had to have been signs. The next morning I drove back to the house, hoping to slip inside, gather some clothes, and disappear again. Daniel's car was gone, but Selena's silver Mercedes gleamed in the driveway like it belonged there. I used my key to enter, calling out into the emptiness. I'm just here to get a few things. She appeared at the top of the staircase wearing one of my silk robes. Seeing her draped in my life made my chest seize. Evelyn, she said smoothly, descending with theatrical grace. I wasn't expecting you so early. I won't be long, I answered, heading toward the bedroom. Actually, she intercepted, her voice laced with command. Daniel thought it might be better if you made a list. We'll have everything packed and sent wherever you're staying. The dismissal was subtle but brutal. I was no longer welcome in my own home. How thoughtful of him, I said, turning instead toward the guest room. But everywhere I looked, I saw her. Her handbag sat on the hallway table, her shoes lined up neatly outside the master bedroom. She was erasing me one careful detail at a time. In the guest closet, I found a box of old files. Insurance, medical records, tax returns, all the things I had managed while Daniel pursued his career. As I rifled through for my birth certificate, my fingers brushed a folder hidden behind the papers. I pulled it free. Inside were photographs, not family snapshots, but surveillance images. Selena, though she looked different, shorter hair, darker dye, slipping into cars with strange men, entering buildings I didn't recognize, accepting envelopes of cash. At the bottom lay a business card. Richard Hale Investigations. Discretion guaranteed. My pulse quickened. Daniel had hired someone to follow her. Find what you were looking for? I spun around. Selena stood in the doorway, her expression carefully neutral. I was just getting documents, and I replied, closing the folder too casually. Of course, she stepped closer, her gaze lingering on the box. Evelyn, none of this is personal. Daniel and I, what we have is real. It just happened. How long? I demanded, my voice steady despite the storm in my chest. Her composure cracked for a heartbeat. Does it matter? 2 years? 3? Since before you married my son? Her tone hardened, warning threaded through every syllable. It's not healthy for you to dwell on details. What's done is done. I tucked the folder under my arm. You're right. What's done is done. As I turned to leave, her hand clamped around my arm, her nails biting into my skin. That folder doesn't mean what you think it means. I looked down at her manicured grip, then up into her eyes. For the first time, I saw fear glimmer there. I don't think anything, I said coolly, slipping free. I'm just a discarded wife. What could I possibly know about anything? I left her standing in the guest room and didn't breathe until I was halfway down the highway. Only then did I pull into a McDonald's parking lot and stare at the card again. Someone had been watching her. Someone had been gathering evidence. But who had hired Richard Hale, and what had he uncovered? I dialed the number with shaking hands. A gruff voice answered on the second ring. Hale. Mr. Hale, this is Evelyn Carter. I believe you may have worked for my husband, Daniel Carter. There was a pause. Mrs. Carter, he said slowly. I was wondering what you'd call. Can we meet? Yes, I whispered. There are things you need to know about your daughter-in-law, things your husband chose to ignore. As I hung up, a shiver ran through me, not of fear but of something I hadn't felt in years, anticipation. Selena had underestimated me, and that was her first mistake. The strip mall where Richard Hale kept his office looked like a place where secrets went to rot. Wedged between a dry cleaner and a tax prep service, it was the kind of building most people drove past without a second glance. Inside, the air reeked of burnt coffee and old cigarettes, despite the glowing no smoking sign on the wall. Richard Hale himself looked as though the world had worn him thin. His suit was rumpled, his tie loosened, and his eyes carried the weight of too many nights spent chasing shadows. He wasted no time with pleasantries. Your husband hired me 8 months ago, he said, sliding a thick folder across his desk. He suspected something about Selena, but couldn't pin it down. My heart hammered as I opened the folder. The first page was a background check, and my daughter-in-law's name stared back at me. Not Selena Graves, but Sabrina Kessler. She changes her name often, Hale explained, his voice gravelly. Sabrina, Selena, Zara, different cities, different men. She's 31, not 28 like she told your family. Originally from Chicago. Moved to Florida after some legal trouble. Credit card fraud. Identity theft. Nothing that stuck, but the pattern's clear. She's a predator. The photos that followed turned my stomach. Selena with different men in different states, her hair and clothes altered like costumes. Sometimes a grieving widow draped in black. Sometimes a bubbly young wife. Sometimes the polished girlfriend of a wealthy businessman. Always reinventing, always adapting. She was married 3 times before Matthew, Hale said, each marriage short-lived, just long enough to merge accounts and drain assets. Then she vanished, debt and broken hearts in her wake. I gripped the edge of the desk, my knuckles white. And my son? His eyes softened for the first time. Collateral damage. She needed legitimacy, a way into your family. Marriage to Matthew gave her that. The fact that he genuinely loves her? That only made her job easier. I flipped through another set of photos. In one, she kissed a man in a parking lot, time-stamped 3 months after her wedding to Matthew. In another, she accepted a thick envelope from a woman in a sharp business suit. Daniel knows? My voice trembled with fury. I gave him the report 6 months ago, Hale said quietly. Told him to warn your son immediately. And he didn't. No, 2 months later, he told me to stop investigating, said the family would handle things internally. The room spun around me. While I had been cooking holiday meals, Daniel had been sitting on proof that Selena was a fraud, and he'd buried it. Hale pulled another folder from his drawer. It gets worse. About 3 months ago, Selena started meeting with an attorney named Harrison Webb, divorce lawyer, very expensive, very good at bleeding people dry. My guess? She's planning to divorce your son next. The words sliced through me. So why stay with Daniel? Because of you. Hale leaned forward, his eyes hard. As long as you were in the marriage, half of everything belonged to you. If you're erased from the equation, she can pit Daniel against Matthew and access everything herself. That birthday party, the witnesses, the humiliation, it wasn't random. It was staged. She wanted to make sure you walked away looking like the villain. A bitter taste filled my mouth. Selena hadn't just taken my husband. She had orchestrated my destruction like a performance. What do you suggest I do? Hale's tired smile returned, but this time it was edged with steel. First, you stop playing her game. Daniel thinks you'll roll over. Selena thinks you're too broken to fight. Prove them both wrong. He scribbled on a yellow legal pad and handed me a sheet. These are the banks and account numbers for every joint account you share with your husband. Close them. Transfer everything into accounts under your name only. That feels wrong. It's not. You're still married. Legally, you have every right, but you have to move quickly before she convinces Daniel to freeze you out. I stared at the paper. 25 years of shared finances, every sacrifice I had made to keep our lives stable, now distilled into numbers on a page. Crossing this line felt dangerous, irreversible. There's more, Hale continued. She's been making deposits into a private account. Large sums, always cash. So far, around $200,000. I looked up sharply. Where would she get that kind of money? That's what we need to find out. And I'll tell you this much. It's not legal. If we can prove it, she won't just lose credibility. She'll lose her freedom. His words sank into me like fire catching dry wood. I had walked into my birthday party as a victim, but I would not walk through the rest of my life that way. Selena wanted a fight. She had one. I stood, extending my hand. Mr. Hale, I've been underestimated my entire marriage. It's time I use that to my advantage. As I left his office, the night air felt different, lighter. Purpose filled me like oxygen. I had been Daniel's wife, Matthew's mother, Selena's convenient victim. But now I was something else entirely. The next morning, I walked into the bank with a smile. I'd like to make a withdrawal, I told the young teller. She glanced at the slip. All of it? Yes, I said, steady as stone. Every penny. By evening, 6 joint accounts were drained, the money secured in a new bank under my name. I tucked copies of Hale's files into a safety deposit box. Selena thought she had written me out of the script, but she had forgotten one thing. The story wasn't finished. Not yet. If you've stayed with me this far, keep listening. The game has only begun, and what comes next will change everything. Don't miss it. Make sure you're following, because Selena Graves has no idea what's coming. 3 days passed before Selena made her next move. I had been staying at the hotel, spending my mornings in the dimly lit cafe downstairs, sipping watery coffee and pretending the world hadn't collapsed around me. On the 3rd morning, she appeared without warning, sliding into the booth across from me as though we were old friends sharing breakfast. She looked immaculate, as always. Designer blouse, flawless makeup, not a single strand of hair out of place. But her eyes told a different story, harder, sharper. Gone was the sweet daughter-in-law act she had used to charm my son. Evelyn, she said, signaling the waitress for coffee, you've been difficult to reach. I cut a piece of scrambled egg with deliberate calm. Have I? I hadn't noticed. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. We need to talk. About what? She waited until the waitress poured her coffee and walked away. Then she leaned forward, her voice dropping low. About the little stunt you pulled at the bank. I set down my fork, feigning confusion. I'm sorry? Don't play dumb. You emptied the accounts, all of them. Oh, that? I took a sip of orange juice. They were joint accounts. I assumed I had every right to access my own money. Her jaw tightened. That money doesn't belong to you anymore. The divorce papers clearly state the divorce papers aren't finalized. I interrupted, my voice cutting through hers. Until they are, I'm still Mrs. Daniel Carter. Those were still my accounts. For the first time, her composure cracked. Rage flashed in her eyes before she smoothed it over with that practiced smile. Evelyn, she said sweetly, I know you're hurt. What happened at your birthday wasn't ideal, but sometimes these things can't be helped. Daniel and I, what we have is real. It's not something either of us planned. Her voice dripped with condescension, as though she was granting me mercy. Of course not, I murmured. But this vindictive behavior isn't helping anyone. You're only making things harder for Matthew, for the whole family. I studied her, really studied her. The careful posture, the calculated tone. Are you threatening me? Her laugh was brittle. Of course not. I'm trying to help you. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone, sliding it across the table. On the screen was a photo of me leaving Richard Hale's office. Private investigators can be useful, she said lightly, but they can also be dangerous, especially when they start poking around in places they don't belong. My blood went cold, but I kept my expression neutral. I'm not sure what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm telling you directly. She leaned closer, her perfume thick in the air. Stay out of my business, Evelyn. Take your little nest egg and disappear quietly. Buy yourself a condo in Florida. Play cards with other discarded wives. Leave my family alone. Your family? Yes, Matthew is my husband. Daniel will be soon. And you? She tilted her head, her smile razor sharp. You're nobody. A bitter old woman who can't accept she's been replaced by someone younger, prettier, smarter. The words rolled over me, venom masked as silk. You know what's interesting? I said, pulling out my phone. Her eyes narrowed. What? I scrolled until I found the article. A newspaper clipping from Chicago. The headline bold, local woman charged with elder abuse and insurance scam. I turned the screen towards her. Zara Petrowski, age 28, accused of befriending elderly widowers, draining their accounts, then disappearing. Charges dropped for lack of evidence, but the pattern was clear. Her face paled. That's not me. No, because you look remarkably similar. Same smile, same bone structure. Hair color's different, but that's easily changed. I swiped to another photo one Hale had given me. Selena accepting an envelope of cash outside the Meridian building. This was 6 weeks ago. Care to explain? Her hand shook as she reached for her cup. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Don't I? I leaned back, suddenly relishing her discomfort. I think I'm dealing with a professional con artist who thought she'd found the perfect mark in my family, but I don't need to prove it in court. All I need is to plant enough doubt in Matthew's mind, or Daniel's, or both. Her mask slipped entirely then. Fear flickered across her features before she steadied herself. What do you want? She whispered. The truth. All of it. She looked around, her voice barely audible. This isn't just a con. There are people involved. People who don't forgive mistakes. A chill ran down my spine. What people, Bob? The kind who don't ask politely when they want their money back. You're in debt. I'm in deep, she corrected bitterly. Your family was supposed to be my way out. How deep? Her eyes met mine, and for once there was no act. 800,000, plus interest. I almost choked. 800,000? How's that even possible? Bad investments, bad partners, a lifestyle I couldn't afford. Same old story, except my creditors don't repossess cars. They break legs, they break lives. She gave a hollow laugh. So yes, I married Matthew. Then I realized Daniel was the better option. You seduced my husband. Your husband seduced himself, she spat. Do you know how lonely he was? Invisible in his own marriage. All I had to do was listen. The words cut deep, but I didn't flinch. And the plan? I asked. Divorce me. Marry him. Then what? Then I'd have access to everything. The house, the business accounts, enough to pay my debts and vanish. And Matthew? She shrugged. Collateral damage. I stared at her, at the woman who had dismantled my family piece by piece for cash. Here's what's going to happen, I said quietly. You're going to leave, divorce Matthew, end things with Daniel, disappear. Her eyes widened. Or what? Or I make sure your creditors know exactly where to find you. Her face drained of color. You wouldn't. Try me. We locked eyes across the table, two women circling each other like predators. Finally, her hand trembled as she set her cup down. I need time. You have 24 hours. That's not enough. 24, I repeated. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. You have no idea what you've just done. Oh, I think I do. She stormed away, leaving her untouched coffee behind. For the first time since my birthday, I felt the scales tip in my favor. But as I sat there alone, a quiet fear gnawed at me. I had cornered her, yes, and cornered animals always bite. The phone call came at 3 a.m, ripping me out of a restless sleep in the hotel bed. My heart raced before I even answered. Mom. Matthew's voice was thin, trembling. Something's happened to Selena. She's in the hospital. I sat up instantly, every nerve on fire. What happened? She called me crying, said someone attacked her in the parking lot. She's at St. Mary's. She She asked for you. Every instinct screamed it was another manipulation, but the fear in my son's voice pierced through my doubts. I'll be right there. The emergency room was chaos, harsh lights, the antiseptic sting in the air, the endless shuffle of footsteps. I found Matthew pacing the waiting area, his hair rumpled, his face drawn with exhaustion and worry. How is she? I asked, bracing myself. They're running tests, concussion, some bruises. She's terrified, Mom. She keeps saying someone's going to come back for her. He raked his hand through his hair, his eyes wide. She won't stop asking for you. Before I could reply, a doctor approached. Family of Selena Carter? Yes, Matthew said quickly, his voice breaking on the word family. She's stable. She wants to see someone named Evelyn. Says it's urgent. Matthew turned to me, desperation etched across his face. Against my better judgment, I followed the doctor. Selena was propped up in a hospital bed, a bandage wrapped dramatically around her head. She looked fragile, too fragile, like a doll that might break at any moment. Evelyn, she whispered when her eyes landed on me. Thank God you came. I stepped closer cautiously. Matthew said you were attacked. Her hand shot out, gripping my wrist with surprising force. Her eyes flicked toward the door, then back to me. We need to talk alone. Matthew hovered in the doorway, reluctant to leave. Give us a minute, sweetheart, I said softly. He hesitated, then nodded and stepped outside. The moment the door closed, Selena's mask dropped. The trembling victim vanished, replaced by the predator I knew too well. You clever bitch, she hissed, nails digging into my skin. You thought you had me cornered, didn't you? I tried to pull free, but she tightened her grip. What are you talking about? The calls, the whispers. Don't play dumb. Your little investigator has been busy. 3 different people contacted my associates yesterday, asking questions. Congratulations, Evelyn. You've just made me worth more to them dead than alive. My stomach flipped. I haven't called anyone. Maybe not you, but your friend Hale has. There's a bounty now, a price on my head. And because of you, that target extends it, Daniel. To Matthew. To you. You're lying. Am I? She smirked, eyes glittering. Check your phone. With shaking hands, I pulled it out. 3 missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. 2 voicemails. I pressed play. The first was a detective from Chicago asking about Zara Petrosky and my family's connection to her. The second froze my blood. A distorted male voice. You have something that belongs to us. Return it, or we'll take it from your family. You have 48 hours. The phone slipped from my hand, clattering against the floor. What did you take from them? I whispered. Her smile was chilling. Does it matter? They think your family has it now. Guilt by association. Isn't that poetic? You fix this, I said, my voice shaking. Undo it. Get my family out of this. I can't, even if I wanted to, which I don't. It's too late. She leaned back against the pillows, feigning weakness, but her eyes burned. You opened this door when you started digging. Now we all live with it. The door opened and Matthew stepped inside. His gaze darted between us, panic rising. Everything okay? I heard voices. Selena's demeanor transformed instantly. Tears filled her eyes. Her hand trembled as she reached for him. I'm so scared, Matthew. They said they'd hurt anyone who helps me. He rushed to her side, folding her hand in his. Who said that? What people? The ones who attacked me, she whispered, gesturing weakly toward her bandaged head. They know about you, about your mother, about Daniel. They think we're all working together. I watched, sickened, as she played him perfectly, fragile, terrified, in desperate need of protection. We should call the police, Matthew said firmly. No, she cried, clutching him tighter. That will only make it worse. These people, they have connections everywhere. The only way to stop this is to give them what they want. And what do they want? His voice broke. Selena turned her eyes toward me, her message sharp as a blade. Money. A lot of money. Matthew's gaze shifted to me, filled with a confusion, fear, and something else. Doubt. Mom, what is she talking about? What's going on? I opened my mouth, but before I could explain, Selena cut in with the precision of a surgeon. Your mother hired someone to investigate me. she said, her voice trembling just enough. She thought she was protecting you, but instead she led dangerous people right to us. It was a masterful lie, part truth, part poison. And I could see Matthew absorbing every word, his love for her turning into suspicion toward me. She's not who you think she is, I pleaded, my voice breaking. Her real name is Zara Petrosky. She's been married before, multiple times. She's a con artist, Matthew. She married you for money. His face went pale. Stop it. I have proof. Bank records, photos, police reports. Stop. His voice cracked, raw with betrayal. I don't want to hear this. Not from you. Selena buried her face in his chest, sobbing softly, and I stood there watching my son slip further from me with every tear she shed. The walls were closing in. I had thought I was winning. Instead, I had handed her the perfect weapon. Me. If you've been following this story, don't turn away now. Things are about to spiral further, and the choices I'll have to make will push me beyond anything I imagined. Stay with me. You'll want to hear what comes next. The sterile corridors of the hospital stretched endlessly as I walked away from my son. Matthew's words still clung to me like shards of glass. You need help. You're the one endangering us. He had chosen her over me, and Selena knew it. I could still see her eyes glowing with satisfaction as she clung to him, the perfect victim, in his arms. By the time I reached the parking lot, the night air felt heavy, pressing against my chest. My hands trembled as I gripped the steering wheel, fighting to breathe. I had thought exposing Selena would save my family. Instead, I had played into her hands. She had turned me into the villain with nothing more than a few tears and a calculated lie. I didn't drive back to the hotel. My instincts dragged me to Richard Hale's office, the only place where the truth felt like it might still matter. The strip mall was nearly deserted, the laundromat glowing weakly beside his door. His light was still on. He answered after my frantic knocking, coffee cup in one hand, exhaustion etched deep into his features. Mrs. Carter, what are you doing here? You called her creditors, I accused, stepping inside. You told them where to find her. She said dangerous people are after my family now because of you. He shut the door firmly. Slow down. Start from the beginning. I told him everything, Selena's hospital act, the voicemails, Matthew's anger. By the time I finished, my chest ached with fury and despair. I didn't call anyone, Hale said quietly. I've been here all night working your case. Then who did? He gestured toward a chair. Sit. There's something you need to know. I sank down, my hands gripping my knees as if to keep myself steady. The debt Selena told you about, it's not what she claimed. She doesn't owe $800,000. She stole it from a cancer charity in Chicago. The FBI's been looking for her for months. I blinked, the words striking like thunder. Stole it? She volunteered at the charity. The director, an older man, trusted her. She siphoned funds slowly, carefully. When he grew suspicious, she vanished. That's the truth. Not some mob debt, not violent creditors, federal agents. I tried to absorb it, but my thoughts raced. Then why the hospital act? The attack? Hale pulled out another folder. She staged it. The head wound was superficial, self-inflicted, just enough blood to sell the story. Security cameras show her arriving alone, walking in under her own power. She needed to buy time and turn your family against you. If they think you're unstable, her lies are safer. I pressed my palms to my eyes. I've already lost them. Matthew believes her. Daniel thinks I'm vindictive. She's won. Has she? Hale leaned forward, his gaze unyielding. What exactly did she ask of you? She wants $2 million to disappear. Did you agree? No, I came here instead. Then she hasn't won. A grim smile tugged at his lips. She's desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. Agent Sullivan, it's Hale. I have information about the Petrosky case. He rattled off Selena's aliases, her location, her schemes. When he hung up, his expression turned serious. Federal agents will be at that hospital within the hour. But you need to decide, do you want justice or do you want to protect your relationship with your family? My throat tightened. What do you mean? If the FBI arrests her tonight, you'll be vindicated. Everything you've said will be proven true. But your son may never forgive you for being the one who destroyed his wife, no matter how poisonous she is. He loves her, Evelyn, and love is blind. The choice sat on me like a crushing weight, vindication at the cost of my son, or silence while Selena destroyed herself. What do you recommend? I whispered. Go home. Sleep. Let me handle it. When the news breaks, act as surprised as everyone else. Home? I laughed bitterly. I don't have a home anymore. You do? He said simply, pulling a set of keys from his drawer. Daniel never changed the locks. Legally, you still have every right until the divorce is finalized. Take it, use it. He'll have bigger problems tomorrow than worrying about where you're sleeping. An hour later, I stood in the driveway of the house I had lived in for 25 years. Daniel's car was parked outside, but Selena's Mercedes was gone. My fingers shook as I slid the key into the lock. The door opened easily. Inside, the silence pressed down, heavy and unfamiliar. Every room I passed felt like a museum of the life I had lost. The kitchen where I had cooked countless dinners. The dining room where we had celebrated birthdays. The living room where laughter once echoed. Upstairs, I paused in the doorway of the master bedroom. Daniel lay sleeping, his face softened by the dim light, lines etched deeper than I remembered. He looked older, weighed down by guilt and secrets. I stood there for a long moment, watching the man who had once been my partner in everything, until he chose her. Tomorrow, he would learn the truth. He would realize the woman he had risked everything for was a criminal. And for the first time in years, I wasn't sure whether I wanted to be beside him when his world shattered. I turned away and slipped into the guest room. Fully clothed, I lay on the bed and stared into the darkness. For the first time in days, I felt something close to peace. Morning would bring chaos. But tonight, for a few fragile hours, the storm outside could not reach me. The morning news nearly stole the breath from my lungs. On Channel 7, I watched the woman who had destroyed my birthday party, my marriage, and nearly my family being led out of St. Mary's Hospital in handcuffs. Her perfect hair was matted, her face pale and streaked, her designer clothes replaced by standard-issue scrubs. The anchor's voice was steady, clinical, as he delivered the story. A Chicago woman wanted in connection with the embezzlement of more than $800,000 from a cancer charity was arrested early this morning while using the alias Selena Carter. Federal investigators confirm she has been living under multiple identities for years and recently married into a prominent local family. The image of her shackled between two agents didn't feel real. For days, she had wielded power over me, over Daniel, over Matthew. She had controlled the narrative, controlled the lies, and now she was being marched into the light, her empire of deceit crumbling before the world. My phone buzzed. Rachel's voice was breathless on the line. Evelyn, have you seen? It's all over the news. How could Matthew not have known? How could any of us not have known? I could hear the panic and disbelief in her voice, but my own felt strangely calm. Yes, I've seen, I said. When I stepped into the living room, Daniel was sitting in front of the television, still in his pajamas, his face ghost white. He looked up at me as though he had seen a ghost. Evelyn, he whispered, how did you get in here? I still live here, I said simply, until the divorce is finalized. His eyes darted back to the screen, to the footage of Selena being shoved into the back of a black SUV. I don't understand. She was good at her job. I cut in, my voice sharp. Very good. He buried his face in his hands, shoulders sagging. I destroyed our marriage for a criminal. Yes, I said, the word like a blade. You did. For the first time, I saw Daniel without the armor of certainty, without the arrogance that had carried him through every argument, every betrayal. He looked broken, smaller than I had ever seen him. His voice cracked. Can you ever forgive me? A week ago, the answer would have been yes. I would have comforted him, offered him the pieces of myself until I had nothing left. But that woman, the one who lived only to keep everyone else whole, was gone. I don't know, I said honestly. I don't know if I want to. Before either of us could speak again, my phone rang. Matthew's name lit up the screen. I answered with my heart pounding. Mom! His voice was raw, broken. I saw the news. Can you come get me? Where are you? The Marriott downtown, room 412. I'll be there. I moved toward the door, but Daniel caught my arm. Let me come with you. He's my son, too. I looked at his hand on me, then into his desperate eyes. No, Daniel. This is something Matthew and I need to do alone. The Marriott room smelled faintly of stale air and grief. Matthew sat on the edge of the bed, still in the same clothes from the hospital, his eyes red and swollen. He looked up as I entered, and the moment I opened my arms, he broke. I'm so sorry, Mom, he choked out, clinging to me like he hadn't since he was a boy. I said horrible things. I chose her over you. And she was, his voice cracked, unable to finish. I held him, my tears finally falling freely. You loved her, I whispered. There's no shame in that. You tried to warn me. You knew, and I wouldn't listen. You were protecting your wife, I said softly. That's what good husbands do. He pulled back, his face searching mine. How are you so calm about this? I feel like I've lost everything. I smoothed his hair the way I had when he was little. You haven't lost everything. You still have me, and we still have each other. We sat in silence, watching the light spill into the room as the city stirred awake. The life Selena had built on lies was collapsing, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something like hope flicker to life. But the road ahead would not be simple. Daniel wanted forgiveness I wasn't sure I could give. Matthew carried scars that would take years to heal. And me, I had choices to make about who I wanted to become when the dust finally settled. If you've walked with me this far, don't stop now. The ending is close, and the final chapter of this story will not be what you expect. Follow along. You won't want to miss what comes next. The federal investigation moved quickly once Selena was taken into custody. By midweek, agents were combing through financial records, tracing wire transfers, and interviewing anyone who had ever crossed her path. News outlets broadcast her face across the country, attaching every alias she had ever used. To the world, she was a master manipulator finally unmasked. To me, she was the shadow I had been living under for far too long. Matthew stayed with me in the house. At first it was awkward, two people sharing silence, both carrying wounds carved by betrayal. He barely spoke for the first 2 days, drifting through the rooms like a ghost. But slowly he began to return to himself. We cooked dinner together in the kitchen, his hands clumsy with the recipes I had made for him his entire life. One night he looked up from his plate and whispered, I don't know who I am without her. You're still Matthew, I said gently. You're the boy who used to fall asleep with his baseball glove, the young man who stayed up all night studying so he could win that scholarship. You are so much more than her lies. Tears glistened in his eyes, but he nodded. That was the first night he slept without waking from nightmares. Daniel, however, was another story. He called every day, sometimes twice. At first, his words were desperate, pleading for forgiveness. Then they turned to guilt. Confessions whispered into the phone about the nights he had spent with Selena, the promises he had made, the blindness he now regretted. I ruined everything, he said over and over, as if repetition could undo the truth. I listened, but I did not answer his pleas. My silence seemed to wound him more than my anger ever could. On the third night after Selena's arrest, I heard a knock on the door. I opened it to find Daniel standing there, his shoulders slumped, his eyes hollow. He looked like a man who had lost everything. Evelyn, he said softly, please don't shut me out. For a moment, the years of our marriage flashed before me. The young man who had once held my hand so tightly, the father who had built sandcastles with Matthew, the husband who had promised me forever, and then the man who had humiliated me in front of everyone I loved, who had let another woman rewrite the story of my life. Why are you here? I asked. Because I don't know where else to go. His voice broke. I can't eat. I can't sleep. I keep seeing her face on the news and realizing I threw away everything good in my life for a lie, for her, and the only person who ever truly loved me won't even look at me anymore. I studied him in the doorway, torn between the remnants of love and the raw ache of betrayal. You chose her, I said quietly. You chose her over me. I know, he whispered, tears brimming, and I would give anything to take it back. Silence stretched between us, thick with the weight of everything unsaid. Finally, I stepped aside. Come in. He moved into the living room, lowering himself onto the sofa like a man twice his age. His hands shook as he reached for mine, but I pulled away. Don't, I said sharply. Not yet. We sat across from each other in the same room where we had once celebrated Christmas mornings, where we had laughed and fought and built a life. Now it felt like neutral ground, neither his nor mine. Do you love her? I asked at last. No, he said without hesitation. I thought I did, but it wasn't love. It was attention. She made me feel seen, and I was so stupid, Evelyn, because the one person who had seen me all along is you. His words cut deep because they were true. I had seen him, supported him, carried him through every storm. And still, when Selena came with her false light, he had walked into it willingly. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said. And if I do, I don't know if I'll ever trust you again. I'll wait, he said simply. As long as it takes, I'll do whatever I have to do. The sound of Matthew's footsteps on the stairs broke the tension. He paused when he saw his father sitting there, his face a mixture of hurt and fury. What is he doing here? Matthew demanded. I stood slowly. He came to talk. To talk, Matthew's voice cracked. After everything he did, after what he put you through, he doesn't deserve to sit in this house. Matthew, Daniel began, but my son cut him off. No, don't you dare say my name like you still have the right. You betrayed her. You betrayed me. And you let that woman walk into our lives and tear it all apart. His fists clenched. You don't get to sit here and ask for forgiveness. Daniel's face crumpled. I deserve your anger. I deserve worse. But I'm still your father. Then start acting like it, Matthew spat before storming back upstairs. The silence that followed was suffocating. Daniel buried his face in his hands again, his shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. For the first time, I felt pity for him, not as my husband, not even as a man, but as a broken soul who had destroyed himself. I didn't touch him. I didn't comfort him. Instead, I sat back in the chair and let the distance between us remain. Some wounds cannot be mended with apologies. Some fractures never heal the same way again. Upstairs, a door slammed. Outside, the wind rattled the windows. And in that fragile, quiet house, I realized that the story wasn't over. Not yet. The trial came sooner than any of us expected. Federal prosecutors wasted no time once the evidence was in their hands. The courtroom was packed with reporters, the air thick with the smell of old wood and anticipation. Zara, sat at the defense table, her hair tied back, her face pale without the armor of glamour. Shackles circled her ankles beneath the table, a harsh reminder of the walls closing around her. I sat in the gallery beside Matthew, his jaw tight, his hands clasped together so hard his knuckles turned white. Daniel sat on the other side of him, a man diminished, his shoulders slumped in defeat. For the first time in months, we were together, though nothing about us felt like a family anymore. The prosecutor laid it all bare: bank records, stolen funds, false identities. Witnesses recounted her patterns: befriending, seducing, stealing, vanishing. Each revelation peeled away the illusion she had woven around our lives, leaving only the raw truth of her deception. When it was Selena's turn to speak, she rose with a composure that chilled me. Her voice was calm, even elegant, as she painted herself as a victim of circumstances, of cruel men, of a world that had left her no choice but to survive however she could. She even let her eyes shimmer with tears when she glanced toward Matthew. For a fleeting moment, I saw my son falter. He had loved her once, after all. Love does not die neatly. It fades, but its ghost lingers. He clenched his jaw and looked down, refusing to meet her gaze. The judge was not swayed. Guilty on every count. 20 years in federal prison. The gavel struck, and with it, the final thread of her power snapped. Outside the courthouse, the cameras swarmed. Microphones thrust forward, voices shouting questions. How did she fool you? Did you know who she was? Do you feel vindicated? I said nothing. I walked past them with my head high, Matthew at my side. For once, I didn't need to defend myself. The truth had spoken louder than I ever could. In the days that followed, the silence was heavy but different, no longer poisoned by her lies, but filled with the slow work of rebuilding. Matthew began therapy, tentative steps toward piecing himself back together. Daniel moved out of the house, renting an apartment across town, a man trying to live with his mistakes. He called less often, and though part of me ached for the life we once shared, I no longer felt chained to it. As for me, I found myself relearning solitude. I walked through the house alone, rediscovering the sound of my own breath, the rhythm of my own steps. The world had not ended, though some days it felt like it had. Instead, it had shifted, reshaped, carved me into something harder and sharper than before. One evening as the sun sank low, Matthew joined me on the porch. The air was cool, the horizon painted in shades of fire. He sat quietly for a long time before speaking. "Do you ever think we'll be normal again?" he asked softly. I looked at him, at the young man who had been dragged into the storm of another's greed, and shook my head. "Not normal, but maybe better, stronger, different." He nodded, a small flicker of hope lighting his tired eyes. We sat together in silence, watching the sky bleed into night. Somewhere out there, Selena was caged by walls and bars, her empire of deceit dismantled. But here, in the quiet, I felt the stirrings of something she could never touch. Resilience. The kind that grows in the ruins of betrayal. The kind that cannot be stolen. And as the first stars appeared, I realized the story wasn't just about losing everything. It was about surviving it, about learning that even in the wreckage, life continues. If you've stayed with me through every twist, every heartbreak, every revelation, thank you. Stories like this remind us that lies can burn bright, but truth always endures. Keep listening, keep following, because sometimes the endings we least expect are the ones that free us the most.